Embajada de Colombia en Hungría y el programa de Colombia nos une. Yo soy Paula Hernández, encargada de funciones consulares de la Embajada, y en este día nos acompaña nuestra traductora Benigna Horvat y Annette Todd, y nuestro exjudicante y estudiante en Hungría, Nicolás Garrote. Como invitado especial tenemos al señor BenceGaramvölgyi. Bence es candidato de doctorado de la Universidad de Educación Física de Budapest y presidente de la Asociación Internacional de Deportes en Hungría. Bienvenido, Bence.
Muchas gracias.
Esta charla se va a tratar de diplomacia deportiva y de la importancia que ha sido para nosotros como las relaciones entre Hungría y Colombia. Le doy la bienvenida a Bence. La charla va a ser, Bence, aunque habla muy bien inglés y español, va a ser la charla en inglés y vamos a traducir. Bence.
Muchas gracias, Paula, and muy buenos días a todos. So as Paula mentioned, I'm going to talk in English this time, and I will have my special translators and interpreters here. And first of all, I would just like to thank this opportunity for being here and the opportunity to talk about the sports diplomacy and how do we understand sport diplomacy and how can sport create a better world. So as Paula mentioned, I am a PhD candidate at the University of Physical Education in Budapest, and also I'm the president of the Budapest Association for International Sports. And during the last years, I had this great opportunity to visit Colombia, your beautiful country, and I visited many places, and I met with a lot of interesting people around Colombia, and it was definitely one of the best months of my life. And I have a personal connection with sports, as I used to play football myself, but I needed to give up when I was 20. So I started this PhD program as well to align my passion for international relations and sports. So my topic is sports diplomacy, and here in this presentation I would like to start with a quote from Nelson Mandela. I'm pretty much sure that many of you already know this quote, which is written here in Spanish, but I will just quote it in English. So Nelson Mandela said, sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way that little else does. It is more powerful than governments in breaking down racial barriers. So I think this is our start point. This is where we can all agree that sport is kind of a common language that brings together people from all around the world, because it's very easy to understand, and it speaks the language of youth. And basically, sport is popular all over the world, and especially popular sports like football can bring together people from different backgrounds, from different social, economic, cultural, and racial backgrounds. So with this, I would just give you a little explanation of what sport diplomacy is, or what sports diplomacy can be. It's not a scientific approach of sport diplomacy, but it's like kind of a more comprehensible definition, which says that sports diplomacy is a mechanism for building bridges and enhancing people-to-people relationship as a universal passion for sports, transcends sociocultural and linguistic barriers, and it unites people. So really, when it comes to sports diplomacy, the essence is that sports is being utilized as a tool that brings people together, create and foster relationships and relations between them. And also, in a way, sports unites people, as Nelson Mandela once said. I would also like to talk a little bit about the different approaches to sports diplomacy. So it's a little bit more like a scientific approach, but it's very important to understand what are the different approaches of sports diplomacy. So when we are talking about diplomacy, it's still a governmental phenomenon, and for this reason, state-led or government-led sports diplomacy refers to the utilization of sport by governments, especially the utilization of athletes and sport events for the purposes of public diplomacy, for the purposes of conducting international relations and conducting foreign affairs. So in this understanding, state as a sport diplomacy, we talk about sport as a tool that provides opportunities for governments and state leaders, and they are using sport for the purposes of image building, nation branding, and creating bridges with other nations, with other governments. So one of the examples that connects to state-led sports diplomacy is, for instance, the Winter Olympic Games in South Korea, where you can probably remember the North and the South Korean teams were united under a shared flag, and they marched together at the opening ceremony. So in a way, Kim Jong-un used these Winter Olympic Games to showcase that North Korea is open for negotiations in other fields. So this is one of the examples of how governments and state leaders are using sport, athletes, and sport events as their tools. On the other hand, we have to differentiate the non-governmental sports diplomacy. So these are more of like the specialized diplomatic activities conducted by non-governmental actors. For instance, international sporting federations or grassroots sport organizations. When it comes to non-governmental sports diplomacy, we can think about two major sports actors. One of them can be FIFA, the Federation International of Football, International Football Federation, and also the International Olympic Committee. For instance, when talking about FIFA, FIFA has more members than the United States has. And on the other hand, for instance, the International Olympic Committee has a permanent observer role in the United Nations. So in this sense, they are already qualified as kind of diplomatic actors. So there is a specialized diplomacy going on within these sport organizations, but also these sport organizations position themselves as the bearer of certain values and ideas, like the Olympic solidarity, or often FIFA positions itself that football is the game of peace. And for instance, in this photo, you can see the former head of FIFA and representatives of Palestine and Israel being united. So this is more of like the non-governmental sports diplomacy. And just to give you a couple of more examples about the different approaches to sports diplomacy, we have in Spanish Diplomacia a través del deporte, or Diplomacia en el deporte, and Diplomacia para el deporte. So it's more like diplomacy through sports, diplomacy in or within sports, and diplomacy for sport. In this first understanding, diplomacy through sport, we can refer to certain sport events as tools for bringing different nations together or making bridges between different governments. One of the most well-known examples is the ping pong diplomacy between the United States and the communist China, because ping pong here in this case was used as a tool to get these two governments together on the same platform, and ping pong as a tool contributed to the opening of diplomatic communication, the diplomatic channels. So ping pong diplomacy is one of the classic examples of diplomacy through sport. Other examples, there are many other examples that we can mention, like there are hockey diplomacy, cricket diplomacy between Pakistan and India, or there is wrestling diplomacy between the United States and Iran. And there are many other examples, historical examples. Diplomacy within or in sport, Diplomacia Deportiva, it more refers to all these diplomatic activities that I was talking about before. So these are the specialized diplomatic activities of the International Olympic Committee or other major international sporting federations. And the last category, Diplomacia para Deporte, or diplomacy for sport, it's rather refers to like the classic diplomatic activities that are realized or delivered in order to support participation in sports at the global level, or in order to fight against the negative trends in sports, to fight against corruption in sports, match fixing in sports, or any phenomenon that is transnational and international in a way. And also there are a lot of NGOs that are promoting development through sport, or sport for development and peace. For instance, there is this global NGO, Peace and Sport, based in Monaco, that is basically the advocate of the sport for development and peace movements. And here I would stop for a short break and give back the word to Paula.
Pues en principio, muchas gracias, Bence, por la introducción. Ha sido muy interesante esta introducción de tu parte y me parece muy acertada la cita de Nelson Mandela. Es muy importante resaltar la importancia del deporte como un idioma universal, un idioma común entre las diferentes culturas, diferentes países. Y por supuesto hay que resaltar el papel de la diplomacia deportiva también en el aspecto de cómo mejorar las relaciones entre las personas. Y pues has mencionado algunos aspectos y algunos ejemplos para la diplomacia deportiva como una herramienta, o el deporte como una herramienta tanto gubernamental como no gubernamental. No sé si nos podrías mencionar algunos acontecimientos históricos donde el deporte tuvo un papel específico pues, en mejorar estas relaciones.
So just turning back to this diplomacy, sports diplomacy question, and how governments utilized sport in the past, we can definitely bring up a variety of examples from the history of the Olympic movement, from the history of Olympism. For instance, if we go back to the 1890s, we can see that certain powers, big powers like the Soviet Union and the United States and its Western allies, they used the Olympic Games for certain sanctions. So they used Olympics, big games, to basically sanction the other superpower. And it was the case, of course, in Los Angeles and Moscow. So the Olympic boycotts are definitely good examples when it comes to the utilization of sport for political purposes, but it's not only the specific case of Los Angeles and Moscow. We can also say that sport has been used by different authoritarian governments since like the beginning of the 20th century. And we can also go back to the 1930s when basically the Berlin Olympics was used to impress the global audience. So the Berlin Olympic Games in the 30s was the first event, first Olympics, which was broadcasted in a number of countries, and it aimed at to depict a different picture about Germany. And this is also one of the ways how sport was utilized for political purposes. And also there are a lot of other examples that I could quote here, also recent examples. So the main message here is that although we like to believe that sport and politics are separated autonomous fields, but the reality shows us that politics always use or utilize in a way sports, and also there is much politics in sport. So these two fields are interactive, and fortunately or not, but governments, they do utilize sport for their political purposes.
Voy a hacer una pequeña resumen de lo que dijo Bence, que pues el deporte y la política tienen mucho en común en el sentido de que varias veces la política usaba el deporte durante la historia para expresar diferentes opiniones o mostrar diferentes imágenes de los países. Por ejemplo, Bence mencionó los Juegos Olímpicos y el papel de los Juegos Olímpicos, por ejemplo, en Moscú y Los Ángeles, y además en la época de Hitler, en los Juegos Olímpicos de Berlín, cuando utilizaron el deporte para mostrar una imagen global frente a todos los países sobre Alemania. Y hay diferentes tipos de ejemplos que podríamos traer de la historia, pero lo más importante que queríamos destacar es que aunque el deporte y la política son diferentes campos, podemos encontrar mucho en común y afortunadamente o desafortunadamente, pero la política siempre utilizaba el deporte como una herramienta. Entonces, Bence, por favor, continúa tu presentación.
Yes. Entonces, going back to the topic, sport and diplomacy, we have to reflect a little bit on sports and public diplomacy. So we are in the 21st century, and the practices of traditional diplomacy has been changing and they have been transformed. So in this 21st century, what we can see, there are more and more diplomatic actors, like I quoted before, the International Olympic Committees, but there are several other transnational companies, international organizations, NGOs that are already classified as diplomatic actors. So the diplomatic space is transforming, and there are also certain diplomatic practices that are increasingly utilized by governments. And one of these diplomatic practices is public diplomacy, or Diplomacia Pública, which is by definition, public diplomacy are any government-sponsored efforts aimed at communicating directly with foreign publics to create a favorable image. So basically, public diplomacy is more about reaching out to the citizens of foreign governments, foreign nations, and trying to influence them in a way which is more favorable for our government. So it's in a way depicting a better image on the country itself, on the nation itself, on the people who are living in this country, in our country. So basically, public diplomacy, it's a tool that it's increasingly utilized by the governments in the 21st century. And it's also partly based on the concept of soft power, or poder blando, which was introduced back then in the end of the 1980s by Joseph Nye, famous Harvard academic, who said that soft power is really the ability to shape the preferences of others through appeal and attraction. So instead of hard power, which is more of like the military and economic power of governments, the importance of soft power is increasing. So soft power is more like how to influence the foreign publics in a way. So it's rather the ability of influencing the foreign publics. And soft power has many aspects. It's also a little bit of a contested field, but at the end of the day, scientists and academics agree that the governmental structures, culture, and also within culture, sports can be the elements of soft power. So, for instance, nations with high level of soft power can influence the publics or the citizens of other territories, other nations, and also there is like a global ranking of soft power. And for instance, you can see here in this chart that in 2017, France and the United Kingdom and the United States were leading this soft power chart. And basically, these countries have also the ability to influence foreign populations, also through sports. If, for instance, you are thinking about the United States, many of us can also think about the NBA. Many of us can think about the NHL, so the famous sports leagues, or just famous sports stars like Michael Jordan, and other sports celebrities. So, just summing it up, sport is basically one of the elements of the soft power, and basically sport can be a very good tool for using or basically attracting people's attention, and sport can be utilized in a way for nation branding and image building of certain countries and governments. So I believe also Colombia has very good practices. So now I would like to turn to Paola to sum it up.
Como estaba diciendo Bence, perdón, la importancia del deporte y lo que estaban preguntando era sobre cómo Colombia se ve o tiene el nation branding en cuanto al deporte. Nosotros tenemos, como todos lo saben, pues es muy importante el tema del fútbol, pues es universal, y tenemos a muchos artistas, a muchos personajes famosos como Falcao, que es embajador de la buena voluntad de UNICEF. Sin embargo, nosotros también, pues como Nation Branding, podemos hablar de las medallas de oro que tenemos en levantamiento de pesas, en BMX y en atletismo, que no son tan comunes, pero nosotros podemos destacarnos en esos deportes. De esta manera, pues a nosotros nos ha ido, pues como Bence explicaba en sus diapositivas, estos son temas que traen que traen a la gente de todo tipo de culturas y que ha traído en los diferentes momentos que destaca durante el tiempo y los ha traído juntos. Si quieres, continúa, Bence.
Sí, gracias. So, just reflecting a little bit more about governmental utilization of sport as a diplomatic tool, we can mention that there are various countries in the world that are taking advantage of this great power of sport, the great popularity of sport for their own purposes, for strengthening their foreign relations strategy, or creating sport diplomacy strategies. So there are various countries over the world that have already realized the big potential of sport, and one of them is certainly Australia, that has developed a unique sport diplomacy approach, and it has a sport diplomacy strategy. So it has actually, now it's already the second turn of the sport diplomacy strategy in Australia, and Australia is certainly one of the leading countries when it comes to the utilization of sport for creating bridges with other nations, especially nations around Australia in the Indo-Pacific region. And also sport in a way is used for the development of social development in these countries. And Australia is heavily financing these sport-based development initiatives. Another country, another example is France, where the 2024 Olympic Games will take place. Also, France has developed sport diplomacy strategy, and it nominated sport diplomacy ambassador. And basically, with French understanding, sport is a tool for social inclusion of disadvantaged youth as well. So the Paris 2024 Olympic Games is largely based on the concept of how sport can involve and include people from disadvantaged backgrounds. And also we can say in the case of France that France is really doing well when it comes to the international sporting organizations. So there are many French sport diplomats that are well positioned in decision-making bodies in international sports. We can also mention the example of Japan. So Japan is supposed to host the Olympic Games this year, but of course, as we all know, due to the pandemic, the coronavirus has been pushed to 2021. So hopefully Tokyo will host the Olympic Games next year. And Japan has also developed a specific sport diplomacy strategy that is also based on the attraction of sporting events to the country. And this way also Japan is trying to create a better image. In the next slides, I'm going to talk a little bit about the sport diplomacy strategy of Colombia, and then also I will reflect on how the Hungarian government is utilizing sport for the purposes of diplomacy and foreign relations. And I feel like I'm quite well positioned to talk about also Colombia, because as I said, in 2018, I visited Colombia, and also I took part in a visit to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and I visited a lot of NGOs that are active in the field of sport for development and peace. So first, I will just talk about the Colombian practice, which I highly admire, because the Colombian sport diplomacy approach is a unique one, which was also regarded by the Peace and Sport Monaco International Organization. And basically, this sport diplomacy approach is definitely different than the one in, for instance, in Japan or in France, because first of all, it really focuses on providing opportunities for socially disadvantaged youngsters that are coming from least favored regions of Colombia. And as probably many of you know, the Colombian government, the Ministry for External Affairs or the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, has been running this cultural and sports mobility exchange programs for a while now. So Colombia has been sending disadvantaged young sport people and young cultural talents to other parts of the world for these kind of cultural visits. And this concept of sport diplomacy is something that is very appealing to us here in Hungary. And also we have initiated a similar program. I will talk about this a little bit later. But here in the photos, you can see these exchanges. So the Colombian government has been contacting various ministries of foreign affairs and consulates all over the world to run these youth exchanges programs. And basically, this is a unique opportunity for Colombian youngsters to learn about the culture and especially sports culture of the receiving country, to get to know the sports culture, to learn about sport, to meet other youngsters. And also it can be, as I experienced, it could be a life-changing experience for the participants who are taking part in this kind of youth exchanges. Also importantly, Colombia has a little bit of a different approach of sports diplomacy because due to the history, there are certain disadvantaged territories within the country itself where sport could play a role also to strengthen cohesion and understanding between certain social groups, certain disadvantaged social groups that do not have the necessary trust to cooperate and collaborate. And therefore also the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has been funding sport-based local initiatives to get communities together to realize educational programs and social development programs for youngsters that are likely to be recruited by illegal armed forces that are still operating in some parts of the country. So basically, sport in this sense is also used in a domestic way in order to prevent forced recruitment by illegal armed forces. So therefore, I really highly admire the sport diplomacy approach of Colombia. And luckily, I was lucky enough to be part of a wonderful initiative, the Hungarian Colombian Sports Diplomacy Initiative, as we have organized already 2 youth exchanges with young Colombian swimmers from different regions. And basically, I am really lucky to be part of, on one hand, on the organizational team. And it was, I think, a major experience for the youngsters who took part in this experience or this exchange. And here I just want to ask Nicolas to talk a little bit about his perspective and also just to sum up what I was saying in English.
I can sum up lo que Bence estaba diciendo. Voy a hablar de las últimas diapositivas porque me parece importante destacar la importancia que ha tenido la diplomacia deportiva con Colombia y Hungría. Entonces Bence habla de que varios países han realizado el potencial del deporte como estrategia, en especial Australia, Francia y Japón, entre otros. También habla de Colombia y Hungría, pero más adelante Bence pues va a hablar en detalle de estos. Va a dar una pequeña explicación al respecto. También se habla de que Colombia tiene un acercamiento distinto a la diplomacia deportiva. Nosotros ya hemos tenido esta experiencia con Hungría en 2 ocasiones. Y Bence hizo parte de ellas, en las que nos pudo ayudar a darle una oportunidad increíble a estas personas. Como lo explica Bence, se han traído a estudiantes, a personas que vienen de ciudades afectadas por el conflicto, y han tenido una posibilidad muy grande de aprender de la cultura húngara y de la cultura del deporte, y a conocer a personalidades en Hungría y de temas de natación. Y ha sido muy enriquecedor para todas estas personas. Han salido muy contentos y han aprendido mucho al respecto. Y esto ha hecho también que hayan estrechado las relaciones con Hungría. Como Bence decía, pues esto ha sido también como una herramienta para acercamiento. En el intercambio pasado, el viceministro había hablado de la posibilidad de extender esta iniciativa no solo a temas de natación, pero a otros deportes como tecbol y esgrima y ciclismo, y abrir a otras ampliar el espectro de posibilidades con otros deportes para continuar con esta gran iniciativa. Y ahora sí, Nicolás, si quieres, cuéntanos de tu experiencia. Nicolás estuvo en el año pasado compartiendo con este intercambio, y estuvo muy cerca a todo lo que pasó durante los días que estuvieron acá los niños.
Paula, muchas gracias. Sí, es verdad, tuve la maravillosa oportunidad de poder compartir fueron aproximadamente 12 nadadores del Amazonas, y es importante resaltar la oportunidad que se les da gracias a la diplomacia deportiva, de que estos deportistas, jóvenes deportistas, no solo practiquen y se dediquen en el país, sino tengan la oportunidad de poder
Nicolás.
El año pasado conocieron a personalidades en el área de la natación, como Boglarka, Katinka Hosu, que son íconos del deporte y la natación en Hungría. La perspectiva que dan los participantes es enriquecedora no solo para ellos, sino para su familia y para el país, ya que estando aquí pueden ver un futuro profesional deportivamente y esforzarse cada día. Quiero contar una anécdota que me pareció muy impactante, y es que en un momento, cuando estábamos en entrenamiento en Duna Arena, que es uno de los más importantes complejos acuáticos y de natación en Budapest, uno de los nadadores se acercó a nosotros con suma preocupación, diciendo: no sé qué voy a hacer, mi nivel no está al nivel de todos estos nadadores, y comenzó a llorar. Son experiencias que a uno lo marcan, saber que uno va a estar ahí, y que ellos decirles no solo a él, sino a todos, que están ahí es para poder aprender de ellos, que estas oportunidades que da los ministerios de Colombia y de Hungría les demuestre a las comunidades, a los diferentes departamentos y a los jóvenes deportistas que ellos pueden llegar ahí y pueden, en un futuro, lo van a lograr y ser mejores cada día. Y en esto me gustaría, Bence, hacerle una pregunta. ¿Qué posibilidades existen para las personas o los nuevos deportistas que puedan participar, que quieran o deseen hacer parte en la diplomacia deportiva, ya sea en Colombia como en Hungría?
Thanks, Nicholas, for the question. I would say that there are a number of opportunities here in Europe, but when it comes to the cooperation between Colombia and Hungary, the opportunities are a little bit less frequent, so they are a little bit limited. But still, I think in the last couple of years, due to these strong relations between the two countries, there has been also a development when it comes to the sports field. For instance, the university where I'm currently pursuing my PhD is managed to establish relations with another Colombian universities in the field of sports science. So we do have a governmental sponsored program which is called Stipendium Hungaricum. And through this governmental sponsor program, we do have students, higher education students in the field of sport as well, coming to Hungary to pursue their higher education here. Can it be the master degrees or also their doctorate or PhD studies? So Stipendium Hungaricum is one of the ways that this how young Colombians can take advantage of, and they can also pursue their sport-related studies here in Europe, in Hungary. But yeah, I think it's also worth to clarify the question, where is Hungary at all? So, ¿dónde está Hungría? Because I guess some of the people listening to this online stream have heard about Hungary, but they can't really position Hungary in the map. So as you can see, it's a really small country in the middle of Europe, in Central Europe, and it has like less than 10 million inhabitants. So it's significantly less than the number of citizens in Colombia. And you probably have heard that Budapest is the capital. Budapest is still a major city in European sense. It has 2 million inhabitants. And basically, with these capacities, with this size, and with these opportunities, we can say that Hungary is at the global stage. It's a small country, but it has like over thousands of years of history. Being a small country with a huge history, we have to capitalize on the soft power, the Hungarian soft power assets, what we have here. And these soft power assets are mainly culture and sports. And although I'm not going to talk about the Hungarian musicians and artists, I have the opportunity just to briefly introduce you the Hungarian sporting heritage. So we are, as I said, we are a really small country, but we have an incredibly rich sporting heritage. And we like to call ourselves as a sports nation. And when it comes to the Summer Olympic Games, Hungary is among the top 10 countries in the world when it comes to the number of the Summer Olympic medals. We almost have like 500 medals in the Summer Olympics. Similarly to Colombia, football is the most popular sport here in Hungary. And although we do not have the strongest team now, but we used to have very famous teams, such as the golden team of the 1950s, led by Ferenc Puskás. And Puskás is our football icon. He played for various teams, including Real Madrid, and also the audience. You have probably heard about the Puskás Awards of the FIFA, which is award to those players who score the most beautiful goals in football season. So Ferenc Puskás is one of our icons in football, and certainly the love of football is still strong here in Hungary, and we have been recently qualified to the European Football Championships, and the group games partly will be organized here in Budapest in the next year. Besides football, we also have to talk about water sports, and Nicolas already mentioned the name of Katinka Hosszú, who is definitely the most well-known Hungarian athlete. She has won 3 Olympic gold medals, and she also earned 9 world first places. Besides Katinka, we are also excelling in different water sports, especially water polo, which is really, really popular in this region of Europe. And Hungary has a particularly strong team. And also when it comes to other water sports like kayak canoe, we are doing pretty well in the Olympic Games. But we can also mention that fencing is pretty much Hungarian traditional sport in this way. So we do have a lot of a huge sporting heritage, and built on this for I would say the last 10 years, the Hungarian government has been building or developing a sport diplomacy strategy that is based on our cultural and sporting heritage, and also it's more focused on the organization and hosting of international sporting competitions in Hungary, especially in Budapest here, which was the European Capital of Sport in 2019. And in the last years, we have organized a number of prestigious international sporting competitions, including the FINA World Athletics Championship in 2017, the World Table Tennis Championship, the World Wrestling Championships, and we are also about to organize the World Athletics Championships in 2023. So definitely one of the key focus of the Hungarian sports diplomacy strategy is the organization of these international sporting competitions, and through this way creating a better image on Hungary, or strengthening the so-called nation branding. So basically using sport events as a tool for raising attention on the existence of Hungary, on our huge cultural and sporting heritage. And these international sporting competitions are good platforms for the Hungarian government to basically pass on its messages. And also these are good opportunities also for public diplomacy. So here in this photo, you can see the beautiful chain bridge with Hungarian parliament, and also Katinka Hosszú was one of the faces of this 2017 World Athletics Championship. And also our sports diplomacy has many different elements. I really don't want to go into details now, but I hope that the people, the Colombian people also listening to this stream, and also Colombian people all around will once have the opportunity to visit Hungary, Budapest, and take part in international sporting competitions. Can it be the International Athletics Championship in 2023, and also other important sporting events. So with this, I would only like to encourage everyone to come and visit us, and also to take part in sporting activities, because in my personal approach, personal perspective, sport and doing sports, especially these days when we have the global pandemic, can only do good for your mental and physical health. And I'm also personally advocating for sport practice. So it's not just enough to watch competitions. It's also important to be active, to go out, to breathe fresh air and practice sport as much as we can. So this is my last thought, and I would like to give back the word for a sum up to my colleagues.
Muchas gracias, Bence, por tus palabras. Yo creo que era muy importante destacar todas estas cosas. Para hacer un resumen pequeño de lo que nos ha dicho Bence, es que en Hungría tanto la cultura como el deporte es muy importante y a pesar de que estamos, que somos un país muy pequeño, pero estamos en el centro de Europa, que nos puede servir y nos puede ayudar en organizar muchos eventos. Desde el punto de vista de la importancia del deporte, Bence destacó algunos deportistas importantes en Hungría, como Katinka Hosszú, o por ejemplo Puskás, que tiene una fama mundial, si podemos decirlo así. También el waterpolo, que es muy importante en Hungría, y el esgrima o kayak y canoa, que tenemos resultados muy buenos. Y también Hungría se enfoca en organizar eventos internacionales que puede servir para el nation branding, para mostrar al mundo cómo es Hungría, tanto la cultura como un evento deportivo, y llama la atención de la gente para que vengan y conozcan nuestro país, nuestras ciudades, y así muchos se enteran de la existencia de Hungría. Entonces, también de esta manera quería invitar a los colombianos para que vengan a visitar nuestro país, y los que viven aquí en Hungría, colombianos, que hagan deporte y que salgan al aire libre, y mientras haga buen tiempo, aprovechamos de esta oportunidad para vivir una vida sana.
También quisiera destacar lo que Bence dijo acerca de la forma en que algunas personas vienen y se hace el intercambio con Stipendium Hungaricum, que es el programa de becas que ha sido muy exitoso, trayendo pues a personas colombianas acá a Hungría, y pues para que aprovechen y aprendan de este programa para que puedan venir y disfrutar del país, que es una maravilla. Muchas gracias, Bence, por la participación. Gracias a todas, Benigna, Anet y Nicolás.
Muchas gracias por la invitación.
Muchas gracias. Y acá finalizamos.
Muchas gracias.